The boy was barefoot, soaked to the skin, and shaking so badly that he could barely get the words out. "Please help me," he whispered. "They're after me." I had only opened my front door because someone had been pounding on it in the middle of the storm. I expected a neighbor, maybe someone whose car had broken down. I never expected to find a terrified boy standing there with blood on his sleeve. I pulled him inside without thinking. "Where are your parents?" He looked toward the dark road behind him. "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" His lips trembled. "They said if I ran, they'd find me." Before I could ask another question, blue and red lights flashed through my windows. "Police!" The boy grabbed my arm so hard his fingernails dug into my skin. "No," he whispered. "Don't let them take me." Then I heard a familiar voice outside. "Mrs. Carter, open the door." My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. It belonged to my son, Daniel, my only child. The boy looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell him I'm here." I stared at the door, unable to breathe, because Daniel hadn't been home in almost 8 months. Not since the night we had argued over the one thing neither of us could forgive the other for. He had become a police officer after his father died, and over the years, his job had changed him. He became quieter, more suspicious, more distant. When I asked what was wrong, he always said the same thing. "Mom, some things are safer if you don't know." I hated that sentence. And now he was standing outside my house in the middle of the night, asking me to open the door while a terrified boy hid behind me. I had no idea that opening that door would expose a secret my family had been carrying for nearly 15 years. I looked at the boy. "What's your name?" "Eli." "Eli, listen to me. I need to know why the police are looking for you." He swallowed. "Because I saw something." "What did you see?" He looked down at his sleeve. "A man hurting someone." My throat tightened. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he whispered, "Your son knows." 3 words. "Your son knows." I stepped backward. "What did you say?" Before he could answer, Daniel knocked again. "Mom, open the door, now." There was something different in his voice. Not anger, fear. I slowly unlocked the door. Daniel stood on the porch wearing a rain-soaked police jacket, one hand resting near his radio. Behind him were 2 other officers. His eyes immediately searched my face. "Are you alone?" I almost said yes. Then I remembered the boy hiding behind the hallway wall. "No," I said. Daniel's expression changed. "Who is here?" "A child." His jaw tightened. "Mom, where is he?" I looked at my son, and for one terrible second I saw the little boy he used to be. The same boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The same boy who once held my hand at his father's funeral and promised me he would always protect me. Then he whispered something that made my knees weak. "Mom, whatever he told you, don't believe him." I turned toward Eli. The boy was staring at Daniel, not like a stranger, like someone who had seen him before. Daniel stepped inside. Eli backed away. "Stay away from me." Daniel stopped. "Eli, I'm not here to hurt you. You said that last time." The room went silent. I looked at my son. "Last time." Daniel's face went pale. "Mom, you don't understand." "No," I said quietly. "I don't, and you're going to explain." One of the officers behind him interrupted. "Officer Carter, we need to take the boy in for questioning." I stepped between them. "No." Daniel stared at me. "Mom, he came to my house asking for help. You don't know what he's involved in. Then tell me." Daniel looked away. That was when I noticed something. His hands were shaking. My son was never afraid. Not when his father died. Not when he joined the police academy. Not when he responded to dangerous calls. But that night, my son was terrified. And I suddenly understood that Eli wasn't the only person hiding something. I took the boy upstairs and locked the bedroom door. Daniel didn't stop me. Instead, he sat at my kitchen table and buried his face in his hands. After several minutes, he finally spoke. "Dad wasn't killed in an accident." I froze. My husband, Michael, had died 15 years earlier in what everyone believed was a drunk driving accident. Daniel had been 17. I had spent years believing that grief had destroyed our family. "You're telling me your father was murdered?" Daniel nodded. And Eli saw the man responsible. I stared at him. "Who?" Daniel looked toward the ceiling. The man was part of a group that used teenagers to move stolen money and drugs through the county. My stomach turned. What does that have to do with your father? Dad found out. Daniel told me that shortly before Michael died, he had discovered financial records connected to the group. He had planned to report them, but someone got to him first. The records disappeared. The case was buried. And Daniel, who had been a teenager at the time, spent years believing the police had failed his father. So you became a police officer to find them. I became a police officer because I thought I could. And Eli? Daniel looked down. Eli is the son of the man who killed Dad. I felt the room spin. No, he doesn't want to hurt anyone, Daniel said. He ran because his father found out he had stolen evidence from him. I remembered the boy's bloody sleeve. What evidence? Daniel reached into his jacket and placed a small plastic bag on the table. Inside was a rusted brass key. My breath caught. I knew that key. I had seen it thousands of times. It belonged to a small storage box Michael kept in our basement. A box Daniel and I had searched after his funeral. A box we had always believed was empty. Eli found the key hidden in his father's office, Daniel said. He didn't know what it opened. And you do? Daniel nodded. The storage box. I could barely speak. We already checked it. No, Mom, you checked it. He looked at me. I never told you that I found a second compartment. I stared at him. What was inside? A letter. From your father? Yes. Daniel reached into his jacket again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. Michael's handwriting. The first line nearly broke me. If you're reading this, it means they found out. I couldn't continue. Daniel read it for me. Michael had written that he knew someone inside the police department was helping the criminals. He had hidden the evidence because he didn't know whom he could trust. Then came the part that changed everything. Michael hadn't named the killer. He had named the person who helped cover it up, a police officer. Daniel looked at me. That officer is still alive. Who? He hesitated. Then Eli came running down the stairs. Mr. Carter! Daniel stood. Eli pointed toward the window. He's here. We all turned. A black vehicle sat across the street. The headlights were off. Daniel immediately reached for his radio. But before he could speak, the phone on my kitchen counter rang. It was an old landline I rarely used. I answered. No one spoke. Then a man's voice whispered, "You should never have opened that box." The line went dead. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Mom, get down." The next few minutes happened so quickly that I barely understood them. The officers moved Eli into the basement. Daniel stayed with me. Then the black vehicle drove away. No gunshots. No dramatic chase. Just silence. And somehow that frightened me more. Because whoever had been watching us didn't need to attack. They wanted us to know they could reach us. The next morning, Daniel told me the truth he had been hiding for years. The officer who helped cover up Michael's murder wasn't some distant stranger. It was Daniel's former training supervisor. The man who had encouraged him to become a cop. The man Daniel had trusted. And worse, Daniel had spent months gathering evidence against him without telling me because he feared the man would come after me. That was why Daniel had stayed away. That was why he had stopped answering my questions. He wasn't abandoning me. He was trying to keep me alive. Eli's evidence eventually gave Daniel the missing piece. The brass key opened a second compartment containing copies of financial records and an old photograph. In the photograph were 3 men standing outside a warehouse. Michael, Daniel's supervisor, and Eli's father. But there was one more detail. On the back of the photograph, Michael had written a date. The date was 2 days before his death. Daniel realized the photograph proved his father had met them willingly. He hadn't been ambushed. He had gone there because he believed someone was going to help him expose the operation, and that person had betrayed him. Eli eventually told us his father had confessed everything to him years earlier, believing the boy was too young to understand. But Eli remembered. He remembered the arguments, the threats, the night his father came home covered in blood. He had spent years carrying that memory alone, until the night he finally ran. Months later, the people responsible were arrested after Daniel and other investigators connected the old evidence to financial records still being used. Eli went to live with his aunt. Daniel stayed in the police department, but he requested a transfer. As for me, I never looked at my old house the same way again. One evening, months after that storm, Daniel came to visit. We sat on the porch in silence. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry I lied to you." I looked at my son. "You were trying to protect me. I should have trusted you." I smiled sadly. "You were 17 when you lost your father. You spent half your life trying to solve a crime because you thought it was the only way to honor him." Daniel looked down. "And now?" I reached over and held his hand. "Now you can just be my son." His eyes filled with tears. For years, I had believed that the worst night of my life was the night my husband died. I was wrong. The worst night was the night my son stood outside my door as a police officer, and I realized how much pain he had carried without me. And strangely, the boy who knocked on my door begging me to save him ended up saving my son too. Because Eli didn't just bring a secret into my home that stormy night. He brought us the truth. And sometimes the truth doesn't arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives barefoot, shaking, bleeding, and terrified, knocking on your door at midnight. And sometimes, if you are brave enough to open that door, it gives you back a part of your family you thought you had lost forever.